Knowledge is the plague of life, consciousness. I guess the first thing is, what's consciousness? What does it mean to be conscious?
To be aware.
To be aware. To be aware. And if I said to you that I walked in here today and I was feeling self-conscious, what does that mean? What do we usually take that to mean?
You're self-aware.
Self-aware, but is that how we usually mean it, though? Like if I tell you, oh, I'm feeling kind of self-conscious today. How do we usually mean that?
You're like uncomfortable or you feel awkward.
Yeah. It means I feel awkward, I'm uncomfortable. And it's a really strange thing if you think about it. Like consciousness itself, the fact that you're aware, the fact that you're aware is such an incredible mystery. Like you realize that we have no idea why we're aware? We take for granted that it's because we have a brain, because our brain, okay, how does that work though? No, we have no idea of why we're conscious. We have no idea of why we're self-conscious, why we're conscious of a future and a past and a present. And yet, we've been studying this thing literally for thousands of years, and yet neuroscience, we're no closer to understanding the nature of consciousness than we were 2,000 years ago when the Greeks were trying to figure it out. We have no idea why we're self-aware. And it's kind of like, there's this old story of the fish in the pond where they're swimming around, and this old fish pulls up next to him and asks him, how's the water? And the young fish look at him, and they have no idea what he's talking about, and he swims off. It's because they've been born their entire, they were born and they've lived their entire lives in this pond, in this water, so they don't even notice the water anymore. It's just part of life for them. One of the hallmarks of genius is being able to look at the mundane, the everyday, and call attention to it, to think of it in different ways. I mean, think about how somebody who can come along and point out something really, really obvious to you that you've never thought about before, and how it can make you completely fall in love with that person's mind because they're able to see the everyday things and to find greatness in it or beauty in it or something phenomenal in it. I mean, we're always waiting for some big event to happen before we can get interested. Imagine if you can develop the ability to appreciate the small things of life and really be completely in awe and amazed by them. I mean, you ever think about how fast we're traveling through space right now on a planet that's spinning, and while it's spinning, it's also moving like this in these orbits, and that we're being projected out into space very, very quickly, and yet somehow we managed to survive this, and that can help you maybe understand how small maybe our problems really are. And I don't mean how small our problems are because we don't matter, but because we have such bigger things to be interested and fascinated by. This thing about being self-aware, to be aware that you exist, though, is something that's distinctly human. Only humans can do this. Your cat doesn't worry about yesterday or tomorrow or even much more about today. Your cats and your dogs are only worried about survival in like the immediate sense, but even then that's a really weird thing. Why would they be so afraid of dying? Why would they be so afraid of being kicked or whatever? They don't have a concept of it. There's just something that's built into them as animals that they, it's like this fear of death is just kind of built into us, and we have this gut reaction to try to avoid it. And so you can imagine how much more pronounced it is as humans. Earlier, they asked, why is it that, I said, what are some things that we don't want to talk about or think about? And the one that came up was death. And yet, you wake up every day and you know that you're going to die. 10 out of 10 of us are going to die. It's the ultimate statistic. And yet, somehow, some way, you managed to wake up this morning. You managed to bring yourself to this spot today. There's something in all of it that as your minutes are ticking away and your seconds are falling off the table, somehow you managed to come here today and listen to what I'm saying right now, which is either the highest honor I can possibly imagine ever being given, the fact that some of you are listening to me right now, or it's the height of a lack of self-awareness, meaning that as your minutes are slipping off the table and you're passing closer and closer into death, you're choosing to waste your time listening to what I'm saying. Meaning that there's either tremendous value in it, and I'm honored by that, or there's a negative value in it, and you're completely ignorant of it. And I don't know which one it is. But the second that you start to grasp and grapple with the idea that you're mortal, that you're going to die, I mean, think about how much, I mean, if I were to come along and go into your pocket and take $5, you'd be pissed. If I took $20, you'd be furious. And yet we allow people to waste our time and squander our time all the time. We think nothing of it. And we're in a class, and I don't mean to go old man scanning on you, but we stare at a phone. Whatever's on that phone, you can watch it later when when you really have nothing else to do. And yet we do it when there are other things that we could be doing. We could be investing our time and not spending it. Because what's happening right now, at this moment, can never happen again. You're never going to hear it the same way again. Because tomorrow, if I said these exact same things to you, you would be a different person. If I said them to you yesterday, you'd have been a different person. What's happening right now, at this moment, can never be duplicated. Can never happen again. And that's the same about everything that you go through. If any of you guys in here are athletes and you find yourself in a game, there is no just anything. It's like what you're going through at that moment can never happen again. And yet, as those moments pass of things that will never happen again, there's a paradox in that we're rushing quickly towards a thing that will only happen once and happens to all of us, which is to die. All of us die. It's the things that we do. Oh, and I guess we're also all born. And that's pretty much the only thing that we have in common. It's the things that we do in between those moments of birth and death that defines us as a person. And it's that thing that we're self-conscious of. He's talking about it's consciousness. It's being aware that we're going to die. As much as maybe that's one of the things that makes your dog so happy, is that your dog doesn't realize it's going to die. It feels a fear. If it hears a loud noise, it'll feel a fear, but it doesn't even know what it's afraid of. As humans, we know what we're afraid of, and that's what makes the tragedy of life so much more tragic. That we know what we're afraid of, and we also know that it's inevitable and we cannot avoid it. And what's worse, by the way, is not that we can't avoid it, but that everyone we love can't avoid it either. At some point, everyone you love and everyone that they love is going to pass off into death. And it's going to be like we were never here in the first place. That's that open wound. That it's there. We try to avoid it. We might cover it with bandages of entertainment, of avoidance of not thinking about it, but it's a wound that we cover up with bandages that never really heals. We keep picking at it. So maybe one of the ways to let it heal, and it's never going to completely heal, but maybe one of the ways that we can learn to live with it is to learn to live with it, recognizing that our moments are passing and that they're precious. And so therefore maybe the only thing that we can do is lend the most precious experiences we possibly can from those moments, to make a life so that even though we can't avoid that one thing, we can make it worthwhile going through. Because you're all aware of it, and yet somehow, some way you got up this morning, you got here, and you're listening to what I'm saying right now. And so I guess I would ask you afterwards, so now, what are you afraid of? What's the worst that can possibly happen to you? It's going to happen to you. So now what are you afraid of? You're afraid of asking out your crush? What's going to happen? You get embarrassed? Ooh. You're going to die. Well, what happens, I'm not sure if I should go for this business, start a business. I'm not sure if I should go for this opportunity. What? Anybody in here rich? Okay. I'm not going to ask if anybody in here is poor. But what I will say is, what's the worst that happens now if you go for that opportunity after school and you try to start your own business? Oh, what if I get bankrupt? Ooh. So it's Tuesday. You end up right back where you started. And by the way, at the end of it, you're all going to die anyway. And so maybe stop letting those things scare us, because somehow, some way, you're courageous enough to to face that tragedy of life. Because life is tragic. Life is suffering. There's no way around it, but we can find things that make the suffering worthwhile. You know, ask your crush out. And if they say no, say, "You mean not yet?" Go for your business opportunity. And if the business fails, you can say, "Oh, you mean it wasn't successful yet?" In other words, find the things in life that get you up every morning, get you excited, and spend a lot of time, invest a lot of time doing that. Do those things. Because at the end of all of it, that's what makes life worthwhile. I mean, I know that for myself anyway. How best to spend the time, how best to invest the time, just every single day inevitably becomes the question. And that strikes me, anyway, as a thing that's just unspeakably sad in a life that's as short as ours. But once you can answer that question, you can start to do a lot more for yourself. You can do the things that matter. But first figure out what matters, and then do a lot of those things. And then that open wound won't be so bad. Life will still be tragic, but it will be less tragic. And not only that, but you'll make a difference for the people around you, who will also learn how to make life less tragic. In that way, we can lift each other up. And I don't know if there's anything that's more valuable than that, than to lift each other up. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Well, happy Monday. Anyway. Did I come in under 15 minutes? I bet I came in like at 12. 12:22. Goddamn, professional teacher.